Hi, everybody. Welcome to Our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to be talking about Chequered Flag. Aaron, were you ever involved in any sort of street racing activity as a child or as a teen?
Well, as a West Virginian who didn't have any money, we would race. Mm-hmm. And what we would do is we would run out of the outhouse with our various cars. And then what we would do is the way you won the race is if your car started and could get across the creek. That was how you did it. And so I often did not do well in these races. The Chevettes and beat down Grand Ams and whatnot of my youth were not what I would call hot rod cars. What about yourself, Boatster?
You know, I remember hearing about people that would queue up at the light by Kroger. You know, that was the.
You're kidding me?
No, they would.
How could you drag race
and
there?
They would rev. You know,
they didn't race
and then they would just take off. I don't know. There wasn't really a race because you didn't know the people that were around you. Yeah, it was late at night.
Did you ever race anybody in your cars? You had some nice cars.
I had a 1982 Volvo.
Ooh, fancy.
It was not what you call a mean machine. The top speed on its speedometer was 85 miles an hour.
But didn't you have one of these battery-operated gimmicks that a while back? What was that thing you had?
Yeah, I had a Civic Hybrid.
Now, how did that thing do in the drag?
Well, let me tell you about hybrids.
Yeah.
When you first get them, they go like crazy, but once the battery starts to wane, the pickup starts to drag a little bit. And I bought that car used, and the battery was already on the waning side.
That's the same problem I had with my pacemaker. You know, if you don't change the double A's a couple times a month, it's a long day.
Did you ever hear about people? I remember hearing about people racing in like Route 60. Did you ever, in your high school days, hear about any kind of racing activity, illegal?
In all honesty, my dad was a legitimate street racer. Mm-hmm. He was a hot rodder. They did the pink slips, the whole 9 yards. That my dad was into that.
I don't know what that means exactly.
What pink
slips? Swapping
pink slips.
Yeah.
You have a race. The winner takes the loser's pink slip. They own the car.
Really?
Yeah. Dad was dad came from a family of brothers. Well, there was a couple brothers, and they would go in there and do all the tweaking and stuff. But Dad's a real mechanic type, not like me. The acorn fell far from the tree on that. But me personally, really, I mean, honestly, but sincerely, none of my friends had a really fast car. I mean, no one had a big car, and I didn't have my own car in high school. I don't know anyone that did. To be honest with you, I didn't have a car.
So you never drove to high school?
Every once in a while, my mom let me use the car.
But you never drove your own car to high school?
I never had a car in high school. I never had my own car until, years later. It was a long time. I wanted one, but we didn't have any money, You know how it is. It's different now. The kids all the time are getting graduation presents of cars and stuff, but we didn't have any money.
That's true. I'm sure Luke will be driving a car the day he turns 16.
Did you have a car in high school?
Yeah, I had a 1982 Volvo.
See, Brent had a dadgum BMW.
What?
Yeah, it was an antique. Ask him. It was this big.
I never saw it if he had.
Do you know what a fire plug is?
I saw Brent driving around a white. It was like a Citation or something like that.
No. This was before that. His first car was a very nice BMW.
What happened to that car?
It was not that nice.
Okay.
It looked great, but it actually drove like garbage. But I remember thinking to myself, wow, my first car was I didn't have one, and here comes Brent with a freak, but it worked out.
It was a different generation.
It was.
I mean, you are about 16 years older than he is. So, Aaron, I want to talk to you about the Fast and the Furious movies. Have you seen any of those?
I saw a couple of them, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think about that?
They're garbage, yeah. They're no good. I do like Vin Diesel.
You weren't picturing yourself as you were racing around the tracks in Chequered Flag for the ZX Spectrum as one of the characters in the Fast and the Furious.
No. There's an episode of Twilight Zone where this guy walks out into this town, and the town's empty. And he's like, where is everybody? I felt like that guy in a car. It's just this empty, desolate landscape as I drove by.
Have you ever seen
the end of the world?
Have you ever seen the episode of the Twilight Zone where they go into the town, but they're not allowed to leave the town, and they try to escape, and they fell the tree in front of them or something, and they're not allowed to leave?
I have seen that one. It's a good episode. Scotty's in it from Star Trek. Yeah.
So let's talk about Chequered Flag, Aaron.
Okay. Chequered Flag is an interesting little game that came out in '83, Boatster. Now, this one was done by Psion Software. We've run into these guys once before already, if you can believe that.
Well, I was going to say, they've done a couple games. I have a chess game done by Psion Software.
Well, the game we played on this very show, and this was a overwhelming success with the internet community, I might add, was the venerable Match Point.
Oh, yes. Match Point.
If you'll recall, Psion Software, it was Steve Kelly, apparently the one-man show. He was responsible for such prestigious titles as Backgammon, the Scrabble, and Magic was another one he did, and Match Point.
Okay.
So we've come across him before. This game debuted at a retail price of £6.95, which I guess, where's that put that? That's not a bargain title. That's
it's sort of mid-range, yeah.
Yeah, and so this was the racing game where it pits you in a car and you get to ride on real life tracks. Mm-hmm. It says here, according to World of Spectrum, now get this could be crap. It's hard to believe. It says it was the first driving game published for the ZX Spectrum, and one of the first ever computer car simulators. What do you think about that? I wonder if that's true.
I can believe the first. The second one, maybe.
So when you start the game, it allows the player to select a track and one of 3 cars. So I actually took some notes on these tracks because I was wondering if these were real tracks. Because if you look at that opening screen, I will say this opening screen of tracks is like you put this right on the back of the box.
Yeah.
If this was on the back of the box, smack me, because I'm telling you it was. If I was a kid and I was like, racing game, eh? And I look at the back, I'm like, holy crap! Look at all these tracks.
Right.
I'd be
Absolutely.
in, right, and their names. So here are the tracks you get. And folks in the chat room, if you want to chime in on some of these tracks, if there's anything wacky about them. So the first track is the Brands Hatch track in a place called Kent. You ever been to Kent?
Kent's in the south of England. I never went that far south.
It hosted 12 runnings of the British Grand Prix boat, I think in the 70s. Then you've got the Circuit de Monaco from Monte Carlo, Monaco. I know you've never been there.
No, they won't let me in that country.
Here's what I enjoyed. It went from the hardest name of the bunch to the easiest name. Osterreichenring. Osterreich-Ring.
Sounds German.
Well, it's now been renamed the Red Bull Ring. Apparently.
Sponsored by Red Bull. It gives you wings.
It's in Styria, Austria.
Okay.
You ever heard of that?
No.
And it hosted the Austrian Grand Prix 18 straight years.
Makes sense being in Austria.
Yeah, but they've moved along. Then you've got the Autodromo, or also known as the Internazionale Enzo E. Dino Ferrari.
That was a Styx album, right?
And this is in Imola, Italy, and apparently this was named after the son of the fellow that came up with the Ferrari. I guess his son's name was Enzo E. Dino Ferrari.
Okay.
Kind of neat.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Then you've got the Nazionale Monza, which is in Monza, Italy, which is north of Milan. Then you've got I like this one. This is my personal favorite. The Circuit Paul Ricard. This is a French track, La Castellette, France. You've been to France. Ever heard of that one?
I haven't heard of that one.
This one was named after the guy that financed the track. That's how you do it. So I guess Paul Ricard gave them the money, and they built Paul Ricard's track.
Makes sense to me.
Then you've got the Silverstone Circuit. This is in England, and it's near 2 little villages, or hamlets, or you call them, of Silverstone and Whittlebury.
Okay, and Pixel says Silverstone is the main UK circuit.
There you go. Then you've got 4 fictional circuits. So there you go. That's a hefty amount of
That's
circuits.
a lot of tracks. It's a lot of tracks.
You got to give them that. You also get 3 cars. Now, these cars are not real cars. You've got a car named the Ferretti. Wonder what that is. And apparently it's a Ferrari. And then you've got the McFaster, which apparently is a McLaren. So, and then the other one I don't think is a real car. At least
what's the other one?
I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, okay.
So, what is this game, Boat? You want to describe it for the folks? I've been talking for a while.
This is it is a single player adventure. You are racing around this course in sort of a time trial mode. There are no other cars on the track. You are tasked with getting across the finish line without crashing as fast as possible. You must stay on the track. If you go off the track too far, you'll crash. There are objects on the track like oil slicks and things like that
Broken
that you
glass.
must avoid. Yeah, like you often do in an F1
Well, I mean, it
car.
could happen.
The simulation part of this game it's there. I mean, there's like pit stops and stuff like that.
That was, yeah.
And so I can understand them calling this a simulation. What's missing from this simulation is the actual race, however. Part of the excitement of being in a car is racing against other cars, and it's a shame that there are no other cars to speak of. However, it does make the game somewhat easier since you don't have to avoid the other cars. I will say that the cars, they've also sort of gone out of the way. The interior of the cars look different depending on what car. I mean, if you look at what I consider to be one of the worst driving games on Test Drive 2, this game is so much more fun for me. I mean, you've got to agree, right? Test Drive 2 is awful. This is like Test Drive 2, it billed itself as a simulation, but it was crap. This game, I can see. What?
You're an idiot.
Are you serious?
Are you bad-mouthing Test Drive 2? Are you kidding me? I love that game. Test Drive 2 was an awesome game.
That game traveled at 1 frame per second.
I disagree.
This game is okay. So forget what I said then. But anyway, for me,
I thought you were joking.
This game is
rile me up.
No, this game is much better. Like, this game moves so quickly, and the simulation part of it to me works well. If you think about this game as just being me going on a time trial, you've got plenty of tracks to choose from. I don't see how they get much better than this on the Spectrum, to be honest. I'll be looking forward to seeing like the other racing games that are available, but in order to get all of the stuff that they got into this game, I don't think that they could add other racers on the 48K machine.
To look at this game, one must put oneself in front of a Spectrum in 1983. All right. If you look at this game now, what you see is a goofy colored, let's call it a car, but the car in this looks god awful.
Well, no, the part of the problem is that the game tries to render the front of the car.
That they should have just not done.
Yeah, I mean, it really does make it look a little goofy.
It looks horrible.
Yeah.
The dash is fine.
Yeah.
But all that aside, what you've got here is a very again, 83.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very impressive graphical engine, especially from the fellow that brought you Match Point. I read that before. I looked him up before I actually played the game, and I was like, "No, what are we doing here?" Because I
didn't think Match Point was that bad.
I didn't like Match Point very much. This game's engine is quite astounding. Not only does it run smoothly,
mm-hmm.
but in the tradition of, say, turbo, you even have hills you top.
Right.
In this. Now, when you hear all these exotic locales, Monaco and all that, you're thinking to yourself, holy smokes. Don't think this takes place in a green void.
Mm-hmm.
You see
you got a blue sky and you've got a green ground.
Occasionally you'll pass some things on the side of the road like trees. I think there's like a church. Is that what that is?
That's what I always thought it was, yeah.
And there's some shrubs. The crap that's in the road the various things take a toll on your car. Like I said, it's pretty obvious. If you look at did you ever look at the instructions on this? Like there is in-game instructions, and it goes through all the different stuff that you can run over. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it does different stuff. Also there's a demo mode where you can watch the computer go through it. So in terms of the graphical engine on this, it is smooth and effective. And it certainly gives you a sense of speed and a sense of the various tracks given the way they're laid out. So kudos to that. Now, things I don't like. As we mentioned, the car is just the dirt worst. I would have not even put the front end of this thing on there. I don't like it. I don't like it a bit. So there's that. Secondly, the lack of other cars sucks. That much said, given the size of the road, you couldn't have fit other cars on here unless they were driven by lemmings.
Very true.
They would have been very tiny. The sound effects on this, I know, we're going to go back to my favorite saying. The sound on this game is what you would expect, except this is much worse.
See, I don't agree. I think that the sound did not bother me in this game when I was playing.
Those little alarms when you went off the road didn't bother you.
Well, don't go off the road. You won't hear them.
Listen.
It's like the rumble strips when you're driving a real car.
I hit those all the time.
Yeah, and you don't like it, do you?
They don't go... That's what this thing does.
I don't recall
like someone let a child loose at the old tic-tac-toe game show buzzer. Why are you smacking it nonstop? It just drove me absolutely bananas.
Did you say tic-tac-toe?
Tic-tac-toe, the old game show. Is that too far back for you?
That's too far back.
I didn't like how it signaled that you were going off the road. But you do need a visual cue to know that you're in the danger zone, because effectively the way the game works is if you go off the road for too long or too far, it goes like meh for a while before it finally you just crash.
Right, and that's the end.
Crash explosion's not too bad, by the way. Full screen explosion,
double play.
But it just, you hear it so much, it's just the worst. It sounds horrible. The sound of the engine is no fun, but I mean it's okay. But it's I didn't like it. I like the fact that the cars have different interiors. There's an automatic car in there. I don't usually play games where you play a standard shift racer, but I didn't find it too difficult to do. You can overheat your engine, a la Excite Bike, if you don't shift quick enough or whatever.
Which I never had I use the automatic car, which is the McFarlane car, not McLaren.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is that obviously this is very early on in the Spectrum's life. And there is no joystick support.
That sucks.
You're keyboarding it the whole way. And it's interesting because it uses WASD. Well, it doesn't really. It uses ASDF. Okay? So D is like slightly to the right, and then F is like way to the right.
Yeah.
And S is a little to the left. A is way to the left. And so it's kind of, sometimes it's hard to know whether you need a little or a lot when you're making these curves.
I had the dumb guy this to figure out the buttons. I just said, duh, which ones at work, Because one thing I've noticed is the Spectrum's keyboard, even on emulation, does not match up to the
that's
US
because
keyboard.
You're using a cheap, crappy emulator.
I use two.
Yeah, you're not using Spectaculator. Spend $20, man. It's worth it.
What do I look like, Commander Wad?
I'm just saying.
But overall, the fact, if someone came up to you and said, listen, it's 1983, and I know this thing's only got 48K, but let's do a first-person real like arcade racer. You'd have been like, get out of here. You're an idiot. Take your monkey with you and go. This guy pulled it off.
Yeah.
And I'll give him credit. So as much as the ragging on this stuff, the sound stinks, there's nothing you can do about it. There's not another car, there's nothing you can do about it. The fact that this engine works as well as it does is a freaking monumental task. The fact that he was able to add in overheating, the gear shifting, you've got all the working dials, that give you all your RPMs and your speed.
And it's funny, at the end of the race, you'll get a little message like, your tires needed a little work. They was done in 2 hours. You're done. I don't know if that actually has anything to do with the game at all, like your next race or whatever. But it is a nice little point.
You reminded me also. Let's talk about the pitting for a second. Now, when you pit in this game, you just basically pull your bizarre shape into a bunch of lines. Okay. Again, it sounds like a ragging on it, but let me tell you something. I was stunned when this thing had pits.
Yeah.
The first game I ever played that had pits in it was Pit Stop. And to think that this game, and I'm sure this predates Pit Stop, it's very remarkable. And the pits do stuff. I mean, you go in there if your tires are worn and you don't see anything.
Yeah.
But still, it's quite remarkable that it's in there. Boat. I was pretty impressed with that, man, myself. So I'm going to give this thing the thumbs up. Part of me was like, someone that doesn't look at these things in the correct way, you can look at this and be like, oh, this is no good. I mean, especially looking at the car, because the car is amateurish looking. And I don't know why it was drawn that way.
Well, I think it is an F1 car, and that's not something we're used to in this country. So that by itself is strange for us.
You're grasping there.
No, I'm serious.
Does that look like an F1 front end to you?
Because have you ever sat in an F1 car?
Yeah. In fact, I drove here.
Right,
once.
exactly. So that's what you see when you're sitting in an F1 car. So don't tell me it looks strange when you haven't done it before.
How many F1 cars have you been in that have red tires with clown-like colorings on the front?
That's the Spectrum color palette, man.
Just saying.
You can't. In the wheels spin. I don't have an issue with the front end like you do.
I don't like it. I think it's just goofy looking. But otherwise, I think the graphics are. I mean, you have to have something there to sort of gauge where you're at on the track. So I'm going to give them a pass. So. Let's look at how this thing was received. And we should also mention that when you pit, you also get gas. I guess that's kind of obvious. So the folks over at World of Spectrum gave this bad boy 8.03. Now, this game was not an overall runaway hit. Crash gave it a 71%. CBG gave it a 32 out of 40. So they weren't super impressed. Home Computing Weekly gave it a 5 out of 5. Your Computer gave it 4 out of 5. But I thought it was a pretty good outing for it. Crash described the graphics as adequate, and the gameplay is good. But I like this line. I had to read this when I read it on the wiki. They said it felt more serious than fun due to the lack of the other race cars.
I agree with that.
I don't know what that even means.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when you're all by yourself and you've got all the gauges and things, because you got to remember most of the racing games of that era, like pole position, you didn't have a fuel gauge or anything like that, you did have gears, but it wasn't like displayed on a dash. It does feel more serious than.
I like to go back to '83 and just look. I wish I'd done this now because I just thought about it.
Those were the best years of my life.
And just see what was on tap. Because I don't remember any games looking like this smooth in '83. Because, 83 was when I still had my Coco.
Right.
Now, we had a pole position-like game on the Coco, and it was pretty good. But I don't remember it being this smooth. It was much less colorful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, when we talk about like Stunt Car Racer, half of the marvel of that is how smooth it is. And
yeah.
I think this game doesn't do half the things that Stunt Car Racer does, but it plays rather smoothly in such the same way many more years before that.
Let me ask you a question. This is sort of off the subject, but it's on my mind. So we look back at these games, and again, this is an older game, '83. Now, again, we don't really review these. We just sort of talk about what we feel about them. A game like this, now, given the universe of racing games that have came since this was released, could you see yourself going back and sitting down and playing this for any length of time? Because some of these games we play, you could say, okay, like Mike, I was just mentioning to you earlier, my son and me, we often go back and play Chaos. Okay, the old version and the newer version, and they play great now. Some games you can get away with it. A game like this, would you go back and play it now, or is it something you look at, you give respect to, but you're probably not going to come back to it?
I'm going to tell you yes and no.
Okay. So you're going to cop out.
Yes, because this game is strictly you against the environment. The times that you can't complain that another racer screwed you out of, swerves in front of you or whatever. And the fact that it does, this game is definitely a time trial type game. Yeah. That would keep me coming back. No, because there's no joystick support. The joystick support's a killer, and I will say that anytime you have a game that has a goal, a time, just like we talked about in the daily episode, in the decathlon episode, if you've got a goal that can be reached, you can always get your buddies together, no matter what the game is, and get them to sit down and play it. Absolutely, right. So if this game had joystick support, I think that I would definitely come back to it because I think it plays really well. But playing with the keyboard just doesn't do it for me.
One last little item before we move on. This game hit #1 in the UK sales charts. Now get this. What do you think it beat out? Manic Miner.
Really?
Now, what do you think replaced it at #1?
Let's see, 83 to 84. Daley Thompson?
Jet Set Willie.
Oh, really?
So those games, they bookended this. And I thought this was wacky, so I just wrote it in here. In Poland, this game was called Highway Races, but it's got the Polish name here, and I thought it'd be fun to get you to try to say what that is.
That's Wasiji Sosowe.
There you go. So if any of our Polish listeners are here, tell Bo what he actually said. By the way, eBay-wise, $2 to $6 all over Europe, you're good to go.
You know, in the chat, they're comparing this a lot to Night Driver, and I think that's an apt comparison too. Of course, Night Driver not nearly as graphically impressive, seeing that it's just some posts in the ground and an all black screen, but it is the same. You know,
Night Driver controlled a lot better. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, that's true. But one car, one lane. You know, and the chat totally agrees with me about Test Drive 2. They all agree it's garbage.
No, I didn't see that. I saw a lot of love for Test Drive 2.
So, what do you think if you had to compare, just in general, if you've got three sort of perspectives in racing games? You've got the behind the wheel, like this game. You've got the third person, like pole position, or you've got the overhead, like Super Sprint. What's your favorite?
I would say the second person behind the car.
Pole position
Now,
style.
I will say this. One thing I'll give props to with the virtual races where you could switch the camera. I do like that.
That was a revolutionary thing.
There are a lot of nowadays that's more common.
Yeah.
But that, you know, the over the top. I mean, really, that's a whole different game.
It is.
It is racing, but it's a whole different game.
You're right.
You know.
But if you prefer to play, if given the option, the behind the back sort of thing.
I would like to have had the paddles on the Sinclair for this game. Then you got something.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can do the gear shifting with gear.
It would be interesting to know if there's any homebrew titles out there that work with the Atari paddles. I'd love to try some because I've got a set of Atari paddles in the other room.
Yeah.
Try it out. All right, Aaron. Like to thank our lovely supporters. If you would like to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/Our Sinclair. Like to thank Gary Heather, Eric Nelson, Harbonaut, Graham Vebke, Frodo NL, Tapes from the Crypt, Pixels at Dawn, Chris Folds, Paul Harrington, and Christopher Hassel. Thank you so much for supporting the show.
I also want to take and make a brief mention to a good buddy of ours, Steve Rasmussen, who sent us some lovely ZX Spectrum tapes, which we'll unveil in the next show. We appreciate that. He sent me some other stuff too, which we're going to talk about in ARG. But thank you very much, Steve, for listening to shows and supporting us. We appreciate it, man.
Oh, and Laurent Giroux. I have not put you on the list yet. Thank you, Laurent.
Yeah, get on him, Laurent.
Yeah, sorry about that, man. And I also want to thank all the fine folks in chat. We record the show every Friday, except when we don't, or around 5:30ish. And you can join us on YouTube. Laurent Giroux is here, Michael Ryan, Graham Vebke. Looks like Gary Heather is here, Pixels at Dawn, and we are recording late this evening, so the chat has mostly gone to bed. But thank you guys so much for sticking out with us.
They've got to show up to make sure you don't screw up.
That's right. That's right. Absolutely.
We need all the help we can get.
Picard 2005. Thanks for sticking it out, guys. Next week, Aaron, we're going to play one of the most famous titles, one of the most famous licensed titles ever for the ZX Spectrum.
Please, Lord, what is it?
RoboCop.
Okay, RoboCop. Man, I was hoping for Street Hawk. RoboCop.
Yeah. All right. Until then, rewind tape
and press play.